I'm sure I'm not alone in waking up this morning and seeing the result of the UK election and feeling pretty heartbroken. Um, it's quite devastating to see the way that this election has gone. It's devastating from a perspective of understanding and feeling deep down that this is bad for the UK, that it's going to have quite catastrophic consequences down the line. To see the election by such a majority is quite hard to comprehend if you are on this side of the perspective. But the interesting thing is, of course, to see such a majority victory shows that most people have voted a certain way. And most people today, when they wake up, when they see the results as they come in, they will be feeling that their vote and that their wishes have been respected and that they were right to vote that way and that they have won. Now, talking from personal perspective and also the perspective of friends, of course, it's not going to be a surprise to you to know that I am more aligned towards Labour, towards the left, towards more socialist values. But does that mean that people that don't vote in this way are wrong? Does it mean that the majority of people are homophobic, racist, want selfish values to be at the forefront? I don't believe it does. And seeing this result causes a lot of collective grief in those that believe this is really a vote against the collective, that this is a vote for values that are going to essentially destroy a lot of what we work for, a lot of community values, a lot of support for those in need. You know, the NHS will likely be privatised, and that's something that's really hard to accept. But we have to take a different approach. Now, my first reaction when I saw the news was just heartbreaking devastation and grief. And the next feeling that arose instantaneously was anger and blame mixed with a lot of confusion. Like, how can people vote this way? Is it not really clear that Boris Johnson is an absolute idiot, right? Like, can we not see that people have been manipulated by the media and by agenda? Now, the trouble is, I went on Facebook this morning, I kind of knew I was putting myself into the realm of a lot of heartbreak purely because I have my own kind of echo chamber, but I do also have people that are relieved. I have family members that I know would have voted Tory. I have friends, no doubt, that would have voted Tory. Does it mean that they are racist? Does it mean that they are idiots, narrow-minded, or that they don't care enough for others? I don't believe it does. But what I believe is that the whole system is broken. I believe that polarization in any form is the most destructive thing. So what's the answer? What do we need to do to try and find a glimmer of hope? Because even those on the right side of victory today, they're not going to be jubilant by any means, because they just feel that they have been seen. And those that have missed out, those that have voted more towards the left, feel like they've not been seen. And it's this balance where people are seeking for validation and want to be heard in a system that inherently ignores the desires, the needs of the masses, no matter how you vote, right? So what we're experiencing right now is polarization. We're experiencing divide and conquer. And the one way, after this seeming huge setback, the one way to expedite and enhance that sense of defeat is if we continue to polarize ourselves more and more. Now, I'm not deluded, right? I'm not deluded. I know that this is going to have huge impacts on people personally as well as communities. But ultimately, the one thing we can do is seek to learn why this has happened. And this whole process of divide and conquer only serves those at the top, right? Divide and conquer is the idea of creating confusion and separation in the masses so they can be controlled more. And that's exactly what is happening. I've seen people today, and I understand the motivation behind it, but I've seen quite a lot of friends say, if you voted Tory, delete me on Facebook. Or if you, like Boris Johnson, fuck off, you're an idiot. I completely understand this rhetoric and why that comes up. But this is only going to fuel the problem, right? This pain that we feel right now, is understandable, and this grief is understandable, and it is there to be felt. But ultimately, what we have to do is try and understand why this has happened, and to try, and this is the challenge, right? This is the challenge. If we want genuine change, the system has to change. And this isn't like a call for revolution, but it's a call to take a real different perspective on this. What if those people that you know, right? Those people that you know that voted differently, that you really cannot comprehend, and you're baffled by their decision, seek to understand in any conflict. The best results will happen when we accept someone as they are and we seek to understand. And I can guarantee if we do that and we have conversations from a more place, that's loving and compassionate, we'll begin to understand that we're in the same boat. Now, what I feel deeply is that as long as this system remains, as long as the false democracy that we have remains, this stuff will continue to happen. But what we're experiencing on the collective level is a kind of disintegration of the collective ego, a confusion as we kind of start to look at this concept that we've created and see that it's not serving our deepest needs, our deepest desires. The trouble is, if we keep remaining in this paradigm of ego, we're only going to see more issues. We're trying to solve this problem from the same level of consciousness that created it. So how do we step out of this paradigm and begin to create a new paradigm? Again, this isn't about false, idealistic utopia. This is about what we can genuinely do. And what I feel is that what we can genuinely do now is we can feel the heartbreak. We can validate that heartbreak, but we can seek to understand why this division is happening on our own subjective lives, our own subjective experience, to just do the change, the change that we can make. And I really feel now is the time for all of us, right, for the collective to come together and to understand why is it that some people feel that the left, is trying to affect the common good, that it's deluded, that their ideas of socialism are going to kind of send the UK back, that Brexit is damaging because there's a lack of control, all the issues around migration. People are afraid. People have a sense of fear. And it's the same, if you're on the left and you're looking towards the right and you vilify, all this is going to do is create more polarization. And the more polarized we are, the easier we are to control. Now, there's an interesting element to this, which is manipulation. I imagine a lot of you are aware of the kind of propaganda campaign that has been carried out, and aware that the media, now more so than ever, are quite clearly manipulating the public through their own agenda. It's one thing to be aware of this, right? But it's another thing to then vilify people who have been seemingly manipulated, because if they're not aware, if they're caught through in their own subjective paradigm of fear, and that they have their own narrative around why they're right, resistance to that narrative causes more tension and more conflict. I'm streaming. I'm also tired. I'm exhausted. I struggle with this, because ultimately we have two dynamics at play in our lives. We have we have our kind of internal experience, our internal world. We have our personal lives, those that, the kind of tentacles that reach out into the universe around us, that which we can influence, friends and family, and the kind of drip down effect of how these bigger, wider political issues affect us directly, whether it is through, someone like Boris Johnson essentially opening a door to homophobia and racism, and you're on the receiving end of that, or whether you need help and support in the NHS and you're going to be directly affected. I understand how this drips down into our subjective realities. This is one dynamic, as well as the internal dynamic. The third dynamic at play, and the one that we're really experiencing a lot of collective grief around, is the wider reality that we're in. It's the worldview. So what we're experiencing now, we have our sense of self, and all of a sudden a result like this shakes our worldview. But if you're watching now, I just want you to tap in to what you're experiencing purely through your direct experience. And what I mean by this is, you have a sense of self, a sense of this is me and where I am in this world. And with this kind of wider result, your worldview, your wider worldview, your understanding of the world out there changes. So I just want you to check in with that, because that is something that can cause a lot of grief. And really the process of awakening, or the process of enhancing consciousness, is putting a lot more kudos and a lot more weight to the subjective experience. So really what I guess I'm trying to say with this is, there's now a collective worldview that seems completely destroyed and broken, but it's still, from our own individual perspectives, is still within our direct experience, and is something that we can view and we can challenge, right? What I feel needs to be done is that the entire understanding of the collective worldview needs to change through an elevated, more compassionate form of consciousness. Now what happens there is, when an individual changes their worldview, you can influence someone else's worldview, and the collective worldview then changes. But what is becoming clearer and clearer is that actually the ideas and the consciousness behind systems needs to change before the systems themselves change, basically. Practically, I'm kind of waffling. I'm motivated to make this video today because I sense a lot of pain. I'm like, in a way, with this whole collective worldview shattering, at least with people on the left, there's a kind of collective mental health, not necessarily emergency, but there's going to be a lot of desperation, a lot of pain, a lot of heartbreak. I particularly know, if you're someone already suffering from depression, anxiety, this has the potential to elevate that. So what do we do, right? Okay, I'll give you some practical tools which I'm going to apply to myself. I think the first is looking at this grassroots approach. Look at the grassroots approach. I really, this is going to be difficult for me as well, but rather than vilify, seek to understand. Because when you vilify and when you separate, when you create more polarization, this is operating from ego, it's operating from fear, and I completely get it. But if we can actually love, if we can learn to accept and love those that have different perspectives, we're moving them beyond, we're moving beyond conceptual ideas of what it means to be right and wrong. And we're moving down into a more heart-centered place. So if we really want to make change, I think it's a case of first feeling the pain and feeling the grief and allowing this to come up. But then thinking, okay, well, how can I make a difference? How can I genuinely make a difference? And that, for me, comes from connecting with those that really have different views towards us. I will do this. I've got a few people in mind that I know that will have voted and will have feel justified in their vote through being in the majority. I would like to talk to them and understand what motivated you. And rather than being ready to get my point across and jump on their opinion and be like, that's wrong, I just want to understand. Because I still believe that deep down, the core of humanity is compassionate and loving, and at the core we all want to be seen and we want to be heard. But really this grassroots approach is necessary to rebuild from the ground up in our own chambers, in our own kind of spheres of influence. What if we can all get on side beyond Labour, beyond Tories, beyond Lib Dems, beyond Greens? If we can actually kind of build a mutual understanding of what it is that we want, I believe now more than ever it's going to be a trickle-up effect, because this is broken, right? This inequality is broken, the system is broken, and it will remain broken. And rather than just looking at the system, rather than looking at what is there and trying to influence that, we have to, from a grassroots level, change our thinking and to really influence people in the best way we can. But that requires patience, acceptance and love. And this is not cliche bullshit, right? It really does. The power of empathy. There are people, there's a female journalist, I forgot her name, who went to discuss with the alt-right. She was on the Russell Brand podcast, and she discussed and looked to understand why are they there. And then, through this process of understanding and talking, and people on this side being seen, they opened up to their fears and their anxieties. And this is what we now have to do, because we're all just as fearful, we're all just as anxious, and we want to blame. But ultimately, we have to come together and we have to build these communities from a different place. And it's not going to be easy. And again, this is why sphere of influence is important, because I'm aware there's a limitation to what I can change. I'm fully aware of that, and it's doing the best that we can. in addition to this, I've got a few notes. Knowing what we can control, right? So saying I'm gonna really approach this from a completely different perspective of love and connection, and have these conversations, but not from a place of ego, not from feeling right. I think this is important, not to approach these conversations like I am right and you are wrong, but just going like, how did this happen? You know, I feel like this is my point of view, this is yours. What do we agree on? And you will find more than likely there's some element of trauma or there's some element of fear or anxiety that's fueling both sides. But in terms of this grassroots approach, knowing what we can control is important. For example, there's a lot of distress now around like the NHS, around Brexit and the implications of that. Even wider, you know, Trump, climate change. Talking from experience, like when I was really depressed, I would always read the news and it would make me feel even more depressed because I just felt hopeless. Like my worldview, I was forgetting that it was all part of my experience, and this worldview, which was still a collection of thoughts that had been, you know, corrupted and influenced by external factors, but it was still my thoughts and my kind of realm of consciousness. This worldview became really hopeless and made my depression worse. But ultimately, if we're looking for a new paradigm, we have to challenge that, right? We have to challenge this worldview. So in terms of what we can control, there are two options, right? We can look and feel and really like, you know, feel the despair around it. Like, how can this happen? How can this happen? But then all we can do is accept that it is happening. Not from a place of being passive, but just accept we are where we're at. We've got a majority Tory government. The NHS will be privatised. People will be maligned. People that are less fortunate are probably going to suffer. Let's do what we can. Let's do what we can. You know, let's have conversations with those who are suffering and offer them support whilst accepting. Like, I know for instance that I, just by myself, I'm not going to be able to influence like the political structure of the UK and like transform democracy. But what I can do is offer a glimmer of hope and support people through their anxieties and their depression, and try and encourage like a different perspective on this stuff. And you can do the same. So what I really urge you is to transform and alchemize the pain and the despair and the grief that you feel today and turn it into something productive. We're in a crisis. We are in a crisis, but I still do believe and feel and sense and know deep down in my heart we're experiencing an evolution of consciousness. And just as it is with the individual, stuff comes up. There's a lot of trauma that needs to be healed, and we're experiencing collective trauma. But the answer is not to vilify and judge, because what we're doing then, we're resisting the collective trauma. We're resisting the shadow side of society, and the more we resist, the more it will persist. So what we have to do is transform our approach to validate. If you're feeling heartbroken today, validate it. Don't minimize it. Validate it. Feel the grief, feel the anger, feel the pain. But then to make change, we're not going to make change if we vilify and create more separation. The answer is connecting to each other and understanding. And if we can start to do that, I think great things will happen. You know, ultimately, what the people at the top don't want, what the elite don't want, is for everyone else below to be together. And this has been a lifelong. This is not new. This goes back centuries. You know, millennia. The idea of turning people against each other. So if we actually can kind of come together on a grassroots level and create communities that are more connected and accepting, that's doing all we can, and it will trickle up. I promise you, this changed stance and this changed approach to consciousness will trickle up and eventually change the system. I have hope this will happen in my lifetime. Will it? I don't know, but I do have hope that it will. But the answer now, more than ever, is to connect and to try and take a loving approach to this stuff. I've done it. I've been there. Like the last election, I was outraged, trying to change people's minds. But this isn't about trying to change minds. It's about connecting on a heart level and letting go of our individual and collective ego and trying to move towards something that is more loving and more connected and more supportive of everyone. That change starts today. It starts today, and it starts in the way that we can enact change individually. Please, I beg you not to, fall deeper into despair, to fall into bitterness, to fall into anger, because that is serving the current structure that is broken. The answer is to move towards a place of love, not from an empty cliche, but from a genuine, challenging place of opening up to vulnerability, talking to people, understanding, why do you feel left out? Why do you feel that I'm wrong? Let's talk about this. I beg us to be able to have reasoned, compassionate and understanding conversations. This is the resolution of conflict, and we're in a great conflict now. It's not necessarily a war, but it's a conflict of ideas, it's a conflict of identity. And to get through this process and to evolve, we have to start with ourselves, but we also have to start with connecting with those that we really feel are our enemy, right? Because the more we are polarized, the more we're going to stay separate, and the more we stay separate, the more they win. So let's start winning our own battle today, from the grassroots to the top, and just choosing love over fear and over hate. I love you, and I hope that you get some kind of ease or resolution or just whatever from this video. I don't know. I wanted a stream of consciousness. I'm sending you loads of love, sending my friends and family in the UK loads of love. I'll be back soon. And please, let's not let this defeat us, because it does feel like defeat right now, but there is hope, and we are that hope, right? If you felt even a glimmer of love through this video, hold on to that, and look to connect and look to grow through this. We will connect, we will grow, and we will love through this.